Right, let's get an update now as we go around the country to the Western Cape is where we go to next. The rock down there, if you will, Western Cape Results Operation Centre. Good morning, Lindsay Dentlinger. You're watching what's happening down in the Western Cape. Oh, I'm seeing nobody sitting behind you just yet. No doubt it's a very different picture a little bit later, but how is the Western Cape looking this morning?
Morning, Gareth. As you said, we should be very wary of making too many statements at this point because it's a really early morning yet. We always traditionally wait for those 144 or so people who vote on Robben Island to be the real first results coming in, but we understand those ballots will still come across in the ferry this morning. But what we have right now, as to be predicted, I guess, the DA in the lead with around 16 wards right now, but we should point out that's probably less than 2% of the votes counted here this morning, and we see a single ward going to eNCA and the Patriotic Alliance, and you will remember that eNCA is a party in one of the more contested municipalities here in the Western Cape, Beaufort West, currently being run by a coalition of the ANC and the KDF. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch, but for now here in the Metro, certainly what we do know right now is that even though voter turnout, the IEC told us at around midnight last night, was less than 36% in this province, certainly in the city of Cape Town, the DA seems to be holding on, if not as strong as they did in the past, but certainly holding on towards that they have enjoyed a firm grip on over the last 15 or so years.
Lindsay, I want you and I to be meteorologists. For the moment, we had very different weather up in Joburg. We had very hot weather in some parts, some people choosing not to go out. It seemed from the photos I saw, weather could have been a reason for people not to go out and vote yesterday as well. Some atrocious weather I saw on social media.
Yes, Gareth, and that weather also led to some voting stations not opening on time yesterday, although that was resolved in a matter of a few hours, and all voting stations did eventually open, but certainly not the best of weather to hope that people were going to make use of their public holiday to get off their couch and go to a voting station. You would have seen from my colleagues yesterday, especially in the informal settlements of Cape Town, hardly pleasant to go out, not only because of the weather, Gareth, but also the IEC pointing out here last night that, not the greatest of venues in many areas, makeshift venues, doing what they can, the IEC, to find a spot for people to vote. So it's, doubly uncomfortable, people having to stand in small alleyways or on pavements to reach what are often tents that also had to be secured yesterday, Gareth, because of the weather. And that coupled with people just, trying to keep their possessions and their belongings dry. So not the best of conditions yesterday. To what extent that might have affected voter turnout, we'll leave that to the pundits to decide. But certainly we can't discount the fact that it was probably a contributing factor also for contributing to people not using the opportunity to cast their vote yesterday.
Yeah, experts and pundits will leave to the crunching and the scenarios that may have affected voter turnout. But Lindsay, before I let you go, reports from voting stations, there were quite a few of them up in Johannesburg, ballot papers running out. We had people reportedly in one voting station being told to stand in alphabetical order, which we know you can't do at all. We know it's according to your surname, but that process happens much later. Just off the top of your head, any major issues that you're aware of from voting stations as far as the process is concerned? Scanners not working, ballot papers running out, etc.
Gareth, a lot of that has been anecdotal. We did hear some journalists from especially the community radio stations here in Cape Town saying that callers had called in and complained that they weren't perhaps on the voting roll. That seemed to have been a common complaint put to the IEC last night at the provincial press conference that was had here in the evening. But the IEC said unless they had specifics, they couldn't comment. But for them, certainly certainly they're saying all their voter management devices, according to them, were working, and so that was not a prohibiting factor to people turning out. But in the later hours of last night, we did see there were reports of more people trying to, get to that queue before 9 o'clock. And then there was an incident, Gareth, where the wrong ballot papers were at a particular ward. 6 people had voted. This happened quite early yesterday morning, and those votes had to be quarantined. We're waiting to hear what happens in terms of those votes where a wrong ballot paper was delivered. But certainly last night, the IEC saying they didn't have specific details of the kinds of complaints that could not be resolved, because there are processes that allow for people to still vote if they provide the requisite proof that they had registered to vote, but they perhaps didn't appear on the voters' roll when they turned up at a particular station. So, as I said, by last night, a lot of anecdotal reports of people saying that they'd turned up at a voting station but were not registered to vote there, Gareth.
All right, Lindsay Dentlinger, for the moment, thank you very much. An empty Cape Town and Western Cape Results Operations Centre for now. I can assure you're going to get much busier later as well. Also, we can expect updates from the IEC down in the Western Cape. Lindsay, thank you very much indeed. You can see as well, bottom of your screen, we're starting to bring in some of the results. You can see it just below the screen there. And now those are going to be flipping around the whole day. That data coming through from the IEC itself, it does move very quickly, doesn't? I want to remind you as well, it is very difficult to read into much at the moment. The number of votes counted around the country and province by province and then municipality by municipality and then ward by ward is still very, very early. So don't read too much into what you're seeing at the moment. Of course, it gives a little bit of a picture by what's happening. Like there's Mangaung, for example, eThekwini as well, also coming through.